Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G Forces podcast. So, in about a week, we have the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We have had a little bit of a hiatus, sort of, like F1 and motorsport in general. We've kind of taken a break. It's been, 2 weeks since the last race? I know when we first started having these breaks, because, like, normally you just have the summer break and then everything kind of happens like bam 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 afterwards. And I remember last year there was like a week or two break in between Brazil and Vegas, because I think Vegas was like the weekend after or right before Thanksgiving. I can't remember. But I'm kind of happy with these breaks. It's kind of been nice because we can still be F1 fans and like be dedicated, but then also like it gives us time in between during the season to like also do things in our life.
Yeah, I mean, just like personally, I think that it's like easier for people. I mean, I feel like
I wonder how it is with the
Brazil.
drivers.
Yeah, I wonder how it is. I feel like, I mean, take Brazil for instance. Like, we were watching F1 from like 8 a.m. to like well into the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, I mean, there's a lot of American sports that can last that long, but it's just nice that we have a few weekends to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and so next weekend with the Vegas Grand Prix, we will actually, the Vegas Grand Prix will probably be, I think it happens at like 1 a.m. Eastern time, which is where we will be when the race actually happens. We'll probably be pulling in from a 14-hour drive from Nashville to New York for the Thanksgiving week with our families. So I don't know if we'll actually watch it live. It just depends on how energetic we are.
Yeah, we might have that like second wind. I feel like we always get after
I
hitting
feel
the
like we
city.
probably might end up watching it live, to be
But
honest.
I can see us watching it live, but then also falling asleep.
Yeah,
So
or watching it live, not really paying attention as closely as we should, and then rewatching it the next day.
yeah, but
So, this is a crazy week in the world just in general. We have the Vegas Grand Prix, and then movie-wise, we have Wicked and Gladiator 2 coming out. So, it's a crazy week for us.
yeah, life's been insane.
Anyways, we haven't done one of these get ready episodes in a couple of weeks. Really in a couple of races. Life has been very hectic. Things have been going on. Life is cutting back to a bit more normalcy-ish. At least for me. Mary Catherine, I feel like things have been crazy for you with going and getting furniture for the house and whatnot.
Yeah.
For me, things have finally started to get normal again after a couple of months. So, we are going to do a get ready episode today, obviously, which is why you're watching us, because the title said get ready for the Vegas Grand Prix. But, I'm not going to be doing a recap, like a race, like going over an old race, because this is in fact the second one, and the Vegas race that happened way back when. We went over that last year. I will link that somewhere if you're watching it on YouTube, I'll be linking that somewhere on the screen so you can click on that.
It's
and
a good,
if you want to rewatch it.
It's good.
Yeah. So I'm going to be going over the news that's happened in F1 motorsport over the last couple of weeks because things have been kind of crazy. Mary Catherine, what will you be going over?
Yeah, so kind of in similar fashion to Emma, there's not like a lot of, history on like the Vegas Grand Prix because it's year 2. So I kind of wanted to talk about something that's might seem a little out of like left field, but Emma's gonna talk about it when she goes over all of like the news. But the what is it?
The GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association.
Created an Instagram and posted a message about a few issues they're currently having with leadership in FIA and F1. And I felt like a lot of fans who are new haven't kind of seen or really understand like how like this is a big deal for the drivers to like have a united front and to post something like this. It's very different in what they've done in the past. So I wanted to go over the drivers' protest of 1982. We've talked about this a little bit when we went over Niki Lauda. We've brushed on it here and there, but I kind of want to go into why they were protesting, how it went, uh, some of the key players, some of the villains. But yeah, just a quick little blurb. It's not super long because it wasn't a super long protest, but I just feel like right now around the world in F1, outside of F1, there's a lot of crazy stuff. There's a lot of things that people feel the need to speak out and do something about. And I feel like this is just a really good example of like organized leadership and united fronts. So yeah, I just wanted to touch upon that.
Awesome. Well, we are going to get into it.
All right. So we'll start with the history and then Emma will get into the present.
I will get into the present when I go over the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, in 1982, this was the season that Niki Lauda was coming back. He had been on a 2-year hiatus, and at this point, like F1 was super duper excited for him. Just it's Niki Lauda. When going through his contracts, an aspect of what they have to sign is like super license contracts. And he had a pretty big issue with one of the super license regulations that he noticed. The issue that he had was that in the new regulations, it would essentially tie a driver to a team for a specific amount of years. I think a lot of them are around 3, giving the drivers a lot less power on where they can go, how they can negotiate, etc., etc. And this essentially gave like a crap ton of power to the teams. Like they could play around. And it also just kind of like, I think it became like a lot, like it could become a lot more about money. In 1982, Didier Pironi was the president of the Drivers Association. So I believe currently George Russell is the president.
Yes.
So back then it was Pironi. And of course, Niki saw this, and this was not something he was just signing with his time. This was a super license regulation. So this was something that every single driver on the grid was signing. And drivers had signed this. So Niki, of course, brings this up to Pironi and got into contact with him at Kyalami, where the South African GP was held, and this was his first race back, so it was like a big deal. It was, just the fact that he was back again. Pironi and Lauda got together. I believe they got like lawyers together as well. And they went and they raised their concerns regarding this regulation with the head of the FISA, which is what is now known as the FIA, Jean-Marie Balest, and the head of the FOCA, Bernie Ecclestone. The FOCA is the constructor's side. But just so like you guys know, these two men did not get along. Like for a lot of like years like after this, they were constantly fighting for control of F1. I mean, you have to think there's so many, safety issues, regulatory issues that happen in these years. And shockingly, they were both in agreement and basically told the drivers to sit down and shut up. They basically were like, yeah, thanks for bringing it, but like, no, like just drive. Well, then the race weekend started. Thursday morning, Niki showed up to practice with a coach bus, and he asked all the drivers to get onto the coach bus. Apparently, this wasn't like everyone hop, skipped, and jumped onto it. Like apparently,
No, they like forced some
like
people
some
onto
of the
there.
guys, like especially the younger guys, were like no. Apparently,
Because Niki Lauda had the power to do something like this, where like the younger people were like, I'm gonna lose
I'm
my
gonna
job.
lose my job. So with both Lauda and Pironi, they were able to convince the drivers to get on, and Pironi being the head of the drivers association, he had to stay back at the track because he was the negotiator for the drivers. One driver, Jochen Moss, showed up late to practice and was the only one to not get on the bus. So just for some background on the track is outside of Johannesburg. The coach bus took them back to Johannesburg. So they went to practice, showed up, weird coach bus, get shoved onto the coach bus, and they go back to Johannesburg, and they go to a hotel. And apparently, they just kind of, like, hung out by the pool. Like, things were kind of random and weird, but Peroni's back at the track negotiating for everyone. After a bit, Peroni comes back to the drivers with an ultimatum. Go back to practice right now or be banned for life. I think, like a lot of protests we've seen, this first ultimatum is kind of always trying to shake the group.
Trying to see who will listen to that and
It's
like kind of break.
Yeah, it's kind of trying to divide the united force, and this did seem to rattle a lot of the younger drivers. I mean, obviously, like, they don't have this establishment that, like, some of these guys do, but the more seasoned drivers really tried to focus on, like, hey, don't worry, like, we're here with you too, like, because you have people like Prost, you have Villeneuve, you have,
Yeah, you have like
you have
seasoned drivers.
seasoned drivers that everyone knows. Um, Apparently Nikki could kind of tell that if every driver went to their own rooms, people would begin to fold to, like, the demands of leadership. That,
Yeah.
like, people would basically get to their room, be like, okay, have a good night, guys, and then slowly people would just disappear from the hotel going back to their teams. He decided to host a sleepover, barricading the drivers all together for the night in, like, a banquet suite, like a banquet hall.
Yeah.
So it's not even a hotel room. It's just, like, one of those, like rooms they give you when you have, like, team dinners and things like that, or
It's the event space at a hotel.
the event space at a hotel. Apparently it was basically just, like, a piano in the room and just a bunch of mattresses, and there was no bathroom. There's no bathroom. Elio DeAngelis and Gilles Villeneuve played the piano for the group. Apparently, there were not enough beds, so drivers had to double up. And there was, like I said, no bathroom, so they had one key, and they would go out and then relock themselves in since the bathroom was across the hall. Apparently, this added, like, a layer of trust to, like, the drivers. Like, are you going to leave? Or are you going to come back? Like, are you going to the bathroom or are you going to come back? So, like, a little bit of, like, general chaos, but I think people were pretty united.
I feel like if I were one of those drivers, like, being asked, like, are you gonna leave? Are you gonna come back? Like, I'm just picturing, like, Niki Lauda, like, staring them down, being like, are you gonna come back? And I'm like, I don't want Niki Lauda to be on my bad side. Absolutely not.
Only one driver, Tio Fabi, ran and went back to the track.
Little wimp.
This did not make him a favorite amongst the drivers, to say the least. Through all of this, by the way, just reiterating this, Peroni is still negotiating with leadership, and the following morning, he calls Lauda and the drivers to let them know that they won and to come back to practice. Since there was still a whole race weekend to go, some of the teams were pissed. Some of the teams were like, hey, we get it. Like, you got to do what you want to do. Bernie Ecclestone, the head of the FOCA, the constructor side, which sometimes feels like this definitely felt like a little bit of conflict of interest. He was in charge of Brabham at the time. So Piquet was on his team, and I think Piquet was, like, doing very, very well. Like, he was at this point, like, this is what he was known for. Apparently Ecclestone didn't let him participate in practice and went to the media and was like, oh yeah, he's too tired. And just was like, yeah, that's your punishment. Some people went so far as saying Enzo Ferrari was for it, so there was definitely support in, like, some of the key players for this, like people didn't like the regulation.
Yeah.
Well, while the race was going on, it didn't end there. While the race was going on, the stewards announced that following the checkered flag, every single driver would be suspended indefinitely.
Oh my God.
Apparently, and this was the thing that everyone kept saying, apparently this was all hot air and never came to fruition. Niki Lauda apparently alluded to the fact that it would be almost impossible to find 30 plus reserve drivers to fill the suspended drivers, so he was not surprised it never happened. Apparently, the super license clause was never brought up again, and Nikki saw that as the ultimate win. So, chaos, but successful chaos.
I just feel like it makes so much sense knowing the history of Niki Lauda that he would do that. But also, I feel like we really need that nowadays with the drivers. Like, I think we need George Russell to lock Lando Norris and the rest of them all into a room and, like,
Sometimes, I worry that, not
I just want them
worry.
all to have a backbone and, like, stand up for
Yeah,
themselves.
sometimes I worry that the contracts are just so drastically binding these
Oh,
days that there's
100%.
like such a fear. Like it's such a different aspect, but I also like, they protest in their own ways. Like, I think about like one of the most famous is like Lewis's jewelry protest, right?
That
Like,
was so stupid.
in little things in their own way, and I think like they're not robots. Like they're people at the end of the day, and they have to be able to negotiate on their contracts and make decisions for where they're driving, like they have to still be able to be competitive themselves. And like, even what they're protesting today, like, you know, things can't be like this. Like you can't control athletes in the manner that it feels like they are trying to be controlled.
I think that's also there's also something to say there with the consistency or lack of consistency, but also like hypocrisy of the FIA and Formula One as a whole. Um, I mean, this was one of the big things that happened earlier this season. The FIA and F1 this year said that drivers were not allowed to. This became a thing last year, I believe.
Mhm.
But the big scandal happened this year. But drivers aren't allowed to make political statements within the confines of F1 or the FIA. So like in the past, like a couple years ago, in Hungary, they what was it? They banned gay marriage, and Sebastian Vettel showed up to a race wearing like a full rainbow outfit as like a form of protest. And like all of the times during 2020 when Lewis would show up wearing like a Black Lives Matter shirt or like say their names or whatever. Like drivers have done this stuff in the past. They are no longer allowed to do that. And yet this year, the FIA invited Donald Trump, who at that time was a former president and a current candidate for president of the United States, to the Miami Grand Prix and forced McLaren or asked
Mm.
McLaren, didn't force, asked them to show him around and have them as their own special guests and whatnot. A lot of people were angry about this because you tell your drivers that they're not allowed to even say anything about politics, but then you invite someone who is not a current sitting politician
At that point.
at that point in time, and they are currently running for office of the United States. So people were really frustrated about it because it's like this feels very hypocritical. And I mean, it even goes to say with some of the other places that they have races within, like countries that they have races in, people like aren't allowed to talk about those issues.
Well, it all even goes to say, the head of F1's allowed to congratulate who won the United States election.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah. So, like, here's the problem. You cannot sit here and bind drivers by certain things when non-driver leadership
Are allowed to do
are
whatever
allowed
they
to
want.
do and invite whoever they want. And listen, I will be really blunt. I am nothing short of unhappy about what is going on in the country right now. It is very difficult right now, and it was really, really tough to see a sport that a lot of people use for escapism that has tried to separate itself from politics input American politics. You have increased a huge viewership, a huge young viewership in America, and I don't know. I don't appreciate it whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, it is political. I'm not going to sit here and say F1 isn't political. I've seen certain people in certain communities online try to say, oh, this isn't a political space. It is. It's a lot of huge amounts of money, huge amount of influence and power. And so Yeah, I think drivers protesting is a right. It's a right that they
Yeah.
have. And you, at the end of the day, cannot, have an iron fist over the people that are the stars of the show.
Yeah.
Like, we watch for the drivers. I'm sorry, we're not watching for the head of FIA and F1.
I mean,
Like,
even limiting them to the point where like they can't even swear,
yeah,
which is
it's
crazy.
crazy, and there are bigger issues that F1 and FIA should be
The
addressing.
swearing thing just like blows my mind sometimes because I'm like, we watch this sport knowing that there's knowing that there's a possibility we could actually watch somebody die live on television. Hopefully not, but there's always that possibility. Same with like if you watch
Here's
like
here
the NFL, if you watch football, like we almost like sometimes when we watch like Tua get hit with his concussions, like you're literally watching someone's brain practically stop. Like
here's the thing, you have an issue with it, then maybe, I don't know, do more producing of like kids F1 so
yeah,
that
why do we only see
you
that
have
every
a
once in a
very
while?
like you have a very safe, like, you're strictly monitoring it and not showing live interviews. You've already vetted interviews a few minutes later. Like, you have the money.
Yeah.
I also want to, well, you'll get to this when you talk about it, because there's another aspect that they brought up in their post that I was like, my jaw hit the floor, because it's something we've been curious about and we've asked about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that's 1982 protest. Sorry for our long winded,
It's all good.
very, very long winded rant. But yeah, I think, again, we've seen it in all sports, in all manners, in all forms.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. All right. Well, I am going to get into the news. Yeah, I'm going to get into the news. Okay. So, since we just talked about the drivers' protests in the 80s, I am going to go over the first thing for the news. The current Grand Prix Drivers Association post that they posted November 7th. I'm going to read the post to you all because I think that it will make it a lot easier to understand everything. So, bear with me. It's hopefully not too long. So, this is the GPTA statement regarding quote unquote driver misconduct. As is the case with every sport, competitors must abide by the referee's decisions, whether they like it or not, indeed, whether they agree with it or not. This is how sport works. The drivers, our members, are no different and fully understand that. Our members are professional drivers racing in Formula One, the pinnacle of international motorsport. They are the gladiators, and every racing weekend they put on a great show for the fans. With regards to swearing, there is a difference between swearing intended to insult others and more casual swearing, such as you might use to describe bad weather or indeed an inanimate object such as a Formula One car or a driving situation. Thank you for clarifying. We urge the FIA president to also consider his own tone and language when talking to our member drivers, or indeed about them, whether in a public forum or otherwise. Further, our members are adults. They do not need to be given instructions via the media about matters as trivial as the wearing of jewelry and underpants. The GPDA has on countless occasions expressed its view that driver monetary fines are not appropriate for our sport. For the past 3 years, we have called upon the FIA president to share the details and strategy regarding how the FIA financial fines are allocated and where the funds are spent. We have also relayed our concerns about the negative image financial fines bring to the sport. We once again request that the FIA president provides financial transparency and direct, open dialogue with us. All stakeholders, FIA, F1, the teams, and the GPDA, should jointly determine how and where the money is spent for the benefit of our sport. The GPDA wishes to collaborate in a constructive way with all the stakeholders, including the FIA president, in order to promote our great sport for the benefit of everyone who works in it, pays for it, watches it, and indeed loves it. We are playing our part. Best regards, the directors and the chairman of the GPDA on behalf of the Grand Prix drivers. Hashtag Racing United for our safety, our sport, our fans. Okay. Well, so that was their statement. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. Obviously, the first part really is them talking about the swearing and just conversation around people in general. I found it interesting that they are going for the FIA president, being like, it's a little hypocritical of you to tell us not to swear, but then you can say what you want about people You can say what you want about drivers. Also, just for your knowledge, the drivers are not required to be a part of the GPDA, but most of them are. I think that technically all of them are right now, but they actually don't have to be a part of it. It's kind of like being
It's their
it's a
union.
union, but like if you don't want to have the protections of that, then you don't have to. But whatever. Um, making the jewelry and the underpants comment, I think that was definitely like an attack on stuff that's happened in the past. It's just been utterly ridiculous. Uh, the monetary fines on drivers is the part that I'm guessing that you were talking about, of stuff that we've discussed of like, where is this money going when the drivers are fined? Because nobody knows. And it's interesting that the drivers are now publicly stating that they don't even know where it goes.
It is mind-boggling to me that they have no idea where this money is going because
I
it
just
is
feel like that's
no
not legal.
small amount. It's very concerning that it's never been publicly disclosed. And it was funny because I thought it was something maybe like, oh, we're just new fans. Like maybe it's just something like
No, nobody
no
knows
one
where it
really
is.
talks about. And there is a incredible lack of transparency when it comes to the finances. And listen, I get it. It's a corporation like the NFL, the NBA, like they're not sitting here releasing like financial reports, but it's not sitting here, it's not going to community service. Where is it going? It's not going to like, local communities in need. And that it the
And it's
fact that it
individuals
is
like when K-Mag said, like if I get fined,
a
it's
quarter of a
different.
million
It's different for Charles
dollars.
Leclerc to get fined $250,000 because he could sell his watch, but for me, like I'd have to go into hiding. If you don't even know where you have to give all of this money that could have that like this money that you need to the FIA, you don't know where it's going. That's ridiculous.
Well, and I also think there's still a huge issue amongst fans and spectators that the tickets are very, very, very expensive, right? So you're gonna sit here and say in this economy, you're gonna charge the drivers, and I'm not saying that, they're sitting here living in paper boxes, but like you're gonna sit here and flaunt how you can sit there and charge athletes 200 like and just to go back to the cursing thing, like they're not debutantes. They're athletes. Who cares? Like I'm sorry. Like
I know
what
for myself, there
weird
were plenty of
little
times
like
in my athletic career where like I would get pissed
but
off about
like
something and I would curse.
it's also like, I get it if there are certain just like historical rules. Like I think there's rules in like tennis and golf that have been there forever, but like I don't know. I'm sorry. Like maybe I'm just and it's not gonna make my mother happy, but like maybe I'm just like too lazy around cursing, but like really this is the issues you guys like this is what you're this is what you're concerned with? Like
Yeah.
FIA, like this is really it. I just there are bigger issues that they should be focused on.
Yeah, I agree.
Like legitimate issues and alas, it's just stuff that seems to be rightfully so annoying the drivers.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I think the money thing's just crazy.
I'm very interested to see if there is a response or whatnot. Like
Yeah.
there has to be they've got to respond in some manner because they're not going to just like the drivers aren't going to just release this statement with no info afterwards.
Yeah, I can't see it
And
just
to
ending
release it on
here.
Instagram was crazy. Like I feel
Yeah.
like normally this stuff happens on Twitter, but I guess also Twitter's like a shit show now.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense for it to be on Instagram of all the social medias, but it's just kind of crazy.
Modern day protesting, man.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, that's the first big one. On to the rest. Okay, so if y'all didn't see it, Alpine announced that they will be using a Mercedes F1 engine from 2026 and beyond. So this is kind of a really big deal because Renault has been a factory team for Renault, Alpine, same thing, for their entirety of being in F1, and they used to supply engines to other teams, and now they don't. And now they're not even going to be supplying their own engine. It's kind of crazy, but that is something that's happening. I do wonder how that will change the team. They will also be switching over to Mercedes gearboxes, so it's a smoother transition with that power unit as a whole, which makes sense. Um, Dan Fallows stepped down as the Aston Martin F1 technical director, effective immediately, which is kind of wild. But they also just had a really poor season. So, yeah, he did work at, I believe it was Red Bull, and like had worked his way up there and then moved over to Aston. And don't really know what the problem is as to why it's not performing well this season, but could just be an off season. But they also have Adrian Newey coming next season. So, does it really matter in the end?
It's crazy.
I know. Okay, everybody, this is the most ridiculous bullshit you'll ever see. February 18th, mark it on your calendars. All 10 teams are going to have their livery launches together in London at the O2 Arena. Like it's some MMA fight, and
It's giving Hunger Games again. You
Yeah.
guys are giving the weird Hunger Game vibes. Like, I feel like the music is just gonna be the Hunger Games soundtrack. It's just a little.
It feels like the tribute parade, like before the Hunger Games start. It's
Well,
literally the
and
tribute
listen,
parade.
from what I've heard, like, I'm sure it'll, like, I hope they have performers. Like, it can't just be like they're gonna show the 10 cars and then you all
But
leave.
okay? The tickets also sold out instantly, and people bought them and started reselling them on
For
other
like
sites
hundreds, right?
for way more than they were originally priced. And so, like, a lot of fans didn't actually end up getting them. I don't think I would ever personally think about buying tickets for something like that because this just feels utterly ridiculous. I also don't want to validate the F1 and the FIA thinking that fans want this because we don't. I like how the teams all had their own launches and it was like an intimate thing where teams could
Everything
also
was
invite
super
people to.
secret, and it was well, and I saw
The only people who are going to have been invited to this are British influencers. That's it.
Uh,
Like no F1 content creator is going to have been invited.
no.
If it was the teams doing it, then there would have been because they always do invite content creators to their launches. But none of them are going to be invited, and it's just going to be like British influencers. Like I love
Are
as
they
much as I
gonna
love her
walk?
and I listen to her podcast. Madeline RG is probably going to be invited. What's her name?
Are they gonna walk down the runway with the car? Like,
I have no
how is
idea.
this gonna, like, I just I
But
had
it's just the livery. It's not the car.
I had an issue with the driver's introduction at Vegas.
Oh, it's going to happen again this year,
It's
guaranteed.
gonna happen in this year. I think that there was something like so exciting about like the individual launches, like
Yeah.
for that whole week, because it was just like opening up Instagram was like one giant surprise all week, and it was so nice, and every event felt like so like the team, like it made sense, like you could see that they did put like a decent amount of care. And from what I think, like Lissy McIntosh put her video on about it, she said like that was the first event like she got invited to. It was like I think it was the Aston Martin, but like that's the other thing too is like it just kind of like
it's part of the team's like marketing plan as well. Like for them, that's where they invite a lot of sponsors to come. Like they end up like that's where they start their marketing plan for that year basically.
it's
And
just like
now
another mega super event that just doesn't feel personal. Not that like we were invited to any of these, but like
no.
I don't know. It just seems like just another cash grab.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's gonna be weird.
Agreed. We'll see how it goes. One positive thing that the FIA has done. They approved the introduction of driver cooling kits for the 2025 season for extreme temperature races. This could include like a small version of air conditioning within the cars for races like Qatar. And with that being said, they would also increase the weight allowance for the car for those races so that you can have things in it like an air conditioning. And there's going to be like I think they're just trying to figure out what those cooling systems are going to be. But this is great news. Hopefully nobody will pass out this year.
I wonder if it's also just like the fact that the temperatures are rising,
That
like,
the
and
earth is
they're-
warming.
and they're majority of their races are like Europe in the summer
Yeah.
has been crazy the last 2 summers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Agreed. Um, this one kind of makes me laugh. So Red Bull feared that they were going to be the villain in the new F1 movie that will be coming out, I don't know, in like a year or so.
is there a villain?
I don't know, but they
Like
because Mercedes has so much involvement with it and like Lewis is one of the producers, they were afraid that they were going to be portrayed as the quote unquote villain. And I'm like, y'all, you have more important things to be worrying about, guys.
what did they do? What was they were just
That was
concerned?
just it. They were
That's
just
just it?
afraid. They were just afraid.
Okay.
Um, so former racer, retired now. I believe he won like 22 races. I think it was. Damon Hill, he's been a Sky Sports F1 presenter for the last, I think it's 12 years. He has announced his exit from Sky Sports F1. I don't think he's doing anything else. I think he's on the older side, so I don't think he feels like doing it anymore. But that's something that's happened. A few more things. Carlos Sainz will be driving for Williams in the 2024 Abu Dhabi test. So if you didn't know, after the race weekend in Abu Dhabi, the last race of the year, they do like an end of season or like they usually like just a test of the cars. Sometimes it can be like a rookie test. Yeah, whatnot. And so he will be driving Williams' car so he can get a taste for their car, which will be
Do
interesting, going from a Ferrari to a
are
Williams.
those televised?
No,
No, yeah, I didn't think so.
and I don't think we even get like an idea of what actually happened. But they might take like videos, like content for it.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'm
Um,
sure they will. Like the
I'm
first time
sure.
with him in it, yeah.
I'm sure. Speaking of Williams, so there's rumors that they will not be driving in Vegas. So they had a lot of damage, obviously, in Brazil, as we know. And with the cost cap, with the damage that has happened throughout the beginning of the season and just throughout the season as a whole, they've had to spend a lot of money on repairing the cars. And apparently, they just might not have the money to repair the cars enough to get them drivable for Vegas. I don't remember if we talked about this in the last episode or not, but like I was fearful that there was going to come to a point where there wasn't
Yeah.
like there was going to be cars that just couldn't race because they didn't have enough money to put them in, which I feel like means that probably next year the cost cap should probably be reevaluated because I also think that's a little unfair, like just because they had somebody who crashed more often.
Yeah. Well, that's always been kind of like the biggest argument with the cost cap is that you have certain teams that just, either have like a lot more distraction or, they just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
And it's always been cuz that's the other thing when you start to look at the team size difference, you've got 200 employees at Williams and you've got like 1,000 at Mercedes, it makes a difference. And so I think it's just overall it's such a difficult issue because it's like
Yeah.
how do you make exceptions for like Williams when like it's Williams this year but it could be all like it's and that's something that would be the most inconsistent for the FIA if they had to figure that one out.
Yeah. Okay. Last three things that kind of go together ish. So Stake has announced who their last seat will be going to for next year. So that is Gabriel Bortoleto. Oh my God, I'm having such a hard time saying his name. He will be driving in the other seat next year for Stake, Sauber, Audi, whatever you want to call them. He is an F3 champion. He's currently an F2 driver, and he's also a McLaren development driver. So his name has been floating around, and there were rumors that they were looking at him. So I'm not too surprised that he ended up getting the seat. So now the last seat that is not confirmed is the last V-carb seat, which I would imagine would probably go to Liam Lawson. As much as we want Franco to get a seat somewhere for next year, I think that the Sauber seat was going to make more sense for him, unless Red Bull decides to drop Checo and move Liam or Yuki up, which would be. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that because it's Red Bull, but
Why does it gotta? What if they drop Max? Why does it always gotta be Checo?
I'm gonna just ignore that comment. Okay, another name that you've heard before, Robert Schwartzman. He is going to be driving for Prema and IndyCar next year, which is exciting.
Whoa, I didn't see that.
Yeah, we did not think that he was going to get a seat anywhere next year, to be honest. So this is kind of huge. Also, if you hear barking in the background, that's my dog barking in the room next to us at another dog across the street.
Yeah.
I would hope you don't hear it because we've tried everything to make sure you don't, but you never know. The last thing is Logan Sargent did a test drive with, I believe it was Meyer Shank Racing for IndyCar. So he does I can't even focus with my dog barking.
Just finish. Keep going.
He had that. I don't know how it went, to be honest. I think he was smiling in the videos afterwards. And so, yeah. Okay. We're going to move on to our final thoughts now. Final thoughts.
We're getting down to the last ones.
Yeah, we've only got 3 left.
It's been a really long season.
I feel like this season has been going on forever.
I feel like it's been years.
Yeah.
So much has happened. So little has happened.
So much and so little. But, like, also...
So many things I'm curious to see how they... Like, I'm getting...
But, like, we don't even really get a break, though. Because, like, things start
like
up again
months.
and... Yeah.
No, it's like...
It's 3.
Yeah, it's like
3.
3. Yeah,
Yeah, because
February.
the livery launch happens February 18th. So we get, like, 2.5, 3-ish months.
Yeah.
So... It'll be interesting. We'll probably do similar what we did last season, like the in-between season breaks where we did like
1 or 2 random.
Yeah, like a couple of episodes here and there going over some stuff. We'll probably go over some form of motorsport that we didn't go over last year. Probably have like a catch-up episode. We also, I don't know if we mentioned this before. Mary Catherine's husband's parents were in town, and they very kindly gifted Mary Catherine and her husband the McLaren Jack Daniels.
Oh, I didn't know what you were talking about.
So I figured at some point, whether it's our last episode or of the season, or if we want to do like an episode in like January where we crack that baby open and we have a drink and on camera and we talk and stuff, we can do that.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, I've been trying to get Mary Catherine on board with a drunk episode because I think it would be fun.
I think I've been on board. I just don't think we've like done one. Like we don't have an idea. We need to have an idea. We need to do.
I think we should do like a cocktail night, but like make it like for the teams. Like each team have a different cocktail.
Oh God.
I don't know if I can do 10 different cocktails in one night, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we might have to just choose our favorite teams.
Okay.
And then we'd have to surprise we'd surprise each other, but we'd have to film all of it. Anyways, you guys don't need to know about us planning all this stuff.
We'll plan it out.
You'll see it all in the winter. Anyways, go like, subscribe, comment, do all the things, and you probably won't get the recap episode until like Tuesday or Wednesday of the next week of the week after the race. But keep an eye out for it. And I think that's everything.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.